Welcome to the Northern Outer Banks Podcast. From wild horses to small town legends, this is where stories, history, nature, and everyday life come together. Each episode is a front porch conversation with the people and places that give this stretch of North Carolina its soul. Whether you've been coming here for years or just found it on a map, pull up a chair. You're in for a good story. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Northern Outer Banks Podcast. I'm Miles Daniels and I am privileged to be joined today by Buddy Byrum, founder and owner of Buffalo City Distillery on the Northern Outer Banks Mainland. Buddy, it is great to be with you today and I'm excited about this conversation. Just off camera, I have been learning a lot and we're going to talk about some of the same things for our listeners. Some of our folks will be watching, many will be listening, but we are right here at your facility where the distillery process takes place, as well as a beautiful facility, bar, retail area, nice outdoor area. We'll talk about all that. But I want to start with, how did you get in this business? You are the only distillery on the Northern Outer Banks, which encompasses Currituck County, Corolla, 4x4, Mainland. How did this all transpire for you?
Well, it started with really looking at time for a job change. You know, I'd worked for companies all my life, was in senior management with a company, and really felt that it was time for me to do the next thing. And I'd always wanted my own business, but I didn't know what that business would be. I just had this desire to, this entrepreneurial desire to have my own business. And I have a family farm over in Hyde County, and we grow corn. And I was joking with my wife one day. I heard a country music song that said, rain makes corn, corn makes whiskey, and whiskey makes my baby frisky. And I kind of threw that at my wife, and I said, maybe I should just go down into the woods over in Hyde County and become a moonshiner. It was just a joke. She laughed and thought that was funny. Well, about 3 months later, I was on a business trip on my way out to Texas from the Carolinas, and I picked up an airline magazine, and the cover story was craft distilling. And I did not even know craft distilling was a thing. So I read this article, and the more I read, the more I learned. And what I learned was the regulatory environment for distilleries had been very, very restrictive up until just recent years. And what had happened in the beer industry about 30 years ago, when craft brewing kind of started to take off, was just starting to happen with distilling. State laws, federal laws had started to take some of those 1933 post-Prohibition restrictions, and they were starting to break those down. And so the more I read about it, the more I looked at it, the more I looked at my own resources, having a farm that grows a main component of whiskey and vodka. I started looking into this. And at the time, I lived in Charlotte. And so I first thought, well, how can I do this right around here? The more I looked at it, the more I looked at how restrictive things were as far as what a distillery could do at that time. And this is back in 2017. A distillery could not have a bar like you see behind me. We could have a tasting room where I could do a free sample if you took a tour, but I couldn't sell anything. I could sell one bottle a year. So I was looking in Charlotte going, well, if you're not a place that you can go and hang out for a while, enjoy a drink, do that kind of thing, how do you make this work? And then I turned my attention to the Outer Banks, because people come on vacation, they're looking for things to do. Let's go do a tour of a distillery. That sounds fun. So then I started looking. Instead of in Charlotte, I thought, well, what about the Outer Banks? Now, why would I think about the Outer Banks? I've been coming to the Outer Banks all my life. I mean, I did not live here, but I was here almost every weekend growing up as a kid in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s till I went off to college, and even after that. And my wife and I built a house in Duck in 2000, so 25 years ago, that we rented out as a vacation investment. But we had always wanted to retire down here, and that's why we built the house with that in mind. And so I thought, well, maybe I could do a business on the Outer Banks. Maybe that would make sense. And so I started looking around, and eventually we settled on Currituck being a location for the distillery. A lot of reasons: real estate, cost, infrastructure, what it takes to have a facility like this. We require a very large wastewater septic disposal system because of all the cooling water we use. And so I had to get acreage, and I found this site, and it's worked out really well, and it met all the requirements that I needed.
As fascinating as the history of how you founded and started Buffalo City Distillery is the name itself, and I don't think a lot of our guests probably know the history of Buffalo City here in the Outer Banks region, northeastern North Carolina, and you've brought some great history books I see with you. Talk a little bit about how the name was inspired, what you know about the history of Buffalo City, because you mentioned Prohibition, and that it's now, I think, a ghost town, but a thriving community during that era. So let's talk a little bit about Buffalo City itself.
Just like most of your viewers, I didn't know anything about Buffalo City. But when we decided to open a distillery down here, one of the first things we had to figure out was, what are we going to call it? So I did research, and I very quickly learned about Buffalo City. Now, Buffalo City was a mill town that was founded in the 1880s, right after the U.S. Civil War period was over. And a company out of Buffalo, New York, bought up what is today the Alligator National Wildlife Refuge. Over in that area, they bought hundreds of thousands of acres. It was the Buffalo Timber Company out of Buffalo, New York, and they started milling operations there, and the area became known as Buffalo City. Well, that was all virgin forest, never been touched. After a few years, that company got out, sold it to some brothers who had a timber company, and it was called the Dare Forest Company, or Dare Timber Company, and it was the Duval brothers that owned that business. And they kept milling up until the late 19-teens, close to 1920. But the timber economy started really hitting a decline because they'd cut all the good timber. Now they got all the regrowth, and it just wasn't as lucrative as it was. And so they really had a problem keeping that little town open. And at that time, they had almost 3,000 people that lived and worked over there, if you can imagine that. It was the largest town in this part of the state. And that was the only thing they had for the economy. Well, Prohibition hit in 1920. Their location was perfect. It was, the only way in and out of there was basically by boat, up the Milltail Creek out of the Alligator River, and that whole town turned into a large-scale whiskey-producing operation. And during Prohibition, their business was all up in the Northeast. They didn't have a local population, like all the moonshiners west, that you hear about, that everybody is so romanticized, about what a moonshiner is. They had major operations in Buffalo City, and they were smuggling that out by boat up to Elizabeth City, to Norfolk, where smugglers then took it up to the speakeasies up in New York City, Jersey, Pennsylvania, all the main population centers that had the speakeasies that were operating all during Prohibition. So it was the largest whiskey producing operation in the country at the time. It was the moonshine capital during Prohibition. And so what better story? I mean, it was like, I learned about this, and we've got to honor that tradition and bring that back to this area, because it was really important then. And I'll tell you, the interesting thing, I always ask myself, when you think of a moonshiner, if I asked you the question, what's a moonshiner? Most people would think of somebody in the mountains wearing their overalls and the long beard, the popcorn Sutton kind of image. Why don't we know about Buffalo City if it was so important? And the main reason is that their markets all dried up when Prohibition ended. There wasn't a local population that became accustomed to that. But if you go, to the cities west, every local little town had its own little local moonshiner. He wasn't a large-scale guy. He was a small-scale guy. But, Prohibition in North Carolina lasted for 25 years. So in 25 years, that community kind of developed a taste for what that moonshiner was making. When legal alcohol became available again, it didn't taste as good to those people. It cost 3 times as much to those people. They kept buying from the local guy. And so our knowledge of moonshiners was really after Prohibition. It was when they were skirting the taxes and the law was chasing them. The people up in the Northeast never lost their taste for good alcohol because they were getting alcohol smuggled from all over the world. They were still drinking good scotch. They were still drinking Canadian whiskey. And so what Buffalo City made had to be very high quality whiskey in order to be successful. So they weren't making sugar shine. They weren't making what the guys in the mountains were. They were making high quality whiskeys. And so, that really fit well for us.
How do you maintain, that's a good point in terms of quality, because as we were discussing earlier, it's a farm to glass operation, vodka, gin, whiskey. Regionally, in terms of the process of distilling all of those spirits that you sell here and behind the bar, et cetera, and now distribute across the state of North Carolina. What is it about is this something you had to teach yourself, learn, and then talk to me a little bit about the process from farm to glass and what that entails for an operation like yours?
Well, so I was new to distilling. So I had a lot of research to do, a lot of learning to do. I went and worked with distillers. I learned the process. I've always had a good palate for tasting and food, and I knew what I liked and what I didn't like. And so learning how to make a product that meets those requirements, it took a lot of work, to be honest with you. But I had good help, and part of it was, we have a very modern distillery here. I worked with suppliers who put in a lot of automation and very high quality equipment. Our stills all came from Germany, some of the best stills in the world. And I worked with my suppliers. They taught us how to use this equipment, how to work with this equipment. So there's the process. You have to learn the process, which we did. But it also means you have to have good starting ingredients. And this is where our farm really comes into play. A lot of people don't know about the Albemarle-Pamlico Peninsula. That's that area down there where Hyde County is, where Lake Mattamuskeet is. And our farm sits right on the north shore of Lake Mattamuskeet. But that area is known as the Blacklands of North Carolina. The soil is high organic soil, and it goes all the way back to prehistoric history. When the glaciers covered North America, the water didn't flow back to the ocean. So all those glaciers sucked up a lot of the water, and sea level was much lower than it is today. About 18,000 years ago, those ice formations began melting. That was the peak of the North American Ice Age. And over the next 10,000 years, that ice was retreating back north. And as it did, all of that water had to flow back to the ocean. Well, if you come down the rivers, that peninsula over in Hyde County is a basin. And all that organic matter from that was flowing all the way from, way inland was settling in there for years and years and years into the marsh. And so if you go down there, the dirt is jet black. The largest farms in North Carolina exist on that peninsula. The highest yields exist there. And so we grow very flavorful grain in that environment. High productivity and very, very just perfect conditions to grow the best grains. And so we start with really good ingredients. And that really carries through into the final product.
And when we say final product, and for those who are listening who visit the Northern Outer Banks, the Outer Banks in general, as we mentioned at the onset of the conversation, you have this wonderful facility here, quite close to the bridge. We were talking earlier about you've got your own milepost. So tell us a little bit about, just to give our listeners some context, where you located, and to your point, this is not just a place you have to stop on your way down to the Outer Banks. It is definitely worth coming during for most folks, their week here on the beaches.
Yeah, so we're located just minutes from the Kitty Hawk beaches, right across the Wright Brothers, or Wright Memorial Bridge. We have a milepost marker we put up. It's minus 4.5. So, you hear about all the businesses on the Outer Banks, we're at milepost this or that. Well, we're at milepost minus 4.5. And, 0 is on the eastern end of the Wright Memorial Bridge. So we're very, very close. We're an easy trip over, just a few minutes over. And what we did when we built the distillery, and I should talk here, we not only sell our products, but we also have this really nice cocktail lounge. We behind the scenes call it the Dare Forest Lounge because the store in Buffalo City was called the Dare Forest Store. But here at the Dare Forest Lounge, we offer a changing seasonal menu of the best cocktails that you can imagine. And we have a really welcoming staff, a really laid-back environment here. So we have this entertainment area. Well, we also have all of our products available here. We are a grain-based distillery. We make whiskeys, we make vodka, we make bourbon, we make flavored vodkas, and we also have a gin. And so we have a wide variety of spirits to choose from, and that means we can offer practically every and any cocktail you can imagine here with our own local ingredients. So that's nice. But I had a goal when I opened this distillery. The goal was to create an environment that was relaxed, where, and I'm serving two different kind of customers. We have our local customers, the people who live here in Currituck County. And we wanted to be a place that they could come with friends, have a good time, relax, just enjoy a cocktail. We have live music here some days of the week, and we do things like trivia on Wednesday night that the locals really have formed a community around, and they come and have a great time. We have a cigar club that meets here on Thursday night out back. They enjoy a old-fashioned and a cigar together. So we wanted to be a place for the local community to be able to just relax and have a good time. But that carries over. People come to the Outer Banks for leisure. They come here on vacation. We wanted to offer a place that helps them enjoy that vacation, helps them to get what they were looking for out of vacation. We didn't want to have a busy, kind of crazy place. We wanted to have a very relaxing, laid-back environment. It was just fun to sit down for a little while. And, spirits, they can be, when enjoyed responsibly, in moderation, add to that experience. It can help people have a better social time. They can help people open up, relax. Our whole facility is child-friendly, dog-friendly. Our whole backyard is fenced in. We've got a grassed-in area out there. It's really nice back there. We have a pond and nice environment. So it's just a nice place to kind of escape, if you will. And it offers not only the local community, but also offers tourists that opportunity. And because we're here right on the southern tip of Currituck County, we're kind of both Mainland and Outer Banks, because we're so close. We're really part of the Outer Banks, even though we're over on the Mainland.
So I think what I heard you also say is that it's a myth that it can only be bourbon if it's distilled in Kentucky. Is that true?
That is a myth created by somebody in Kentucky, I think.
So that's a marketing myth.
That is a big myth. And if it's interesting, we get visitors here from Kentucky that taste our bourbon and tell us this is as good as anything we've had back home. We make a very good bourbon, and I'm not just saying that. People tell us that, and part of it is patience. We did not release bourbon early like a lot of new distilleries do. We didn't put it in the bottle before it was ready. So we have a nice mature bourbon. And the same goes with all of our spirits. We are very critical about the products. It took over a year to develop our flavored products, and working with different recipes and different things, going through taste trials and tests and things. We want it to be just what we wanted. And with a name like Buffalo City, we have to protect that brand and that name, and we do that by really putting quality, ahead of everything. And we offer tasting flights here. If people come in, they want to try the different products, they can do that.
Do you offer tours of the facility, distillery, et cetera, or just to give some, if folks have never visited, obviously you have the bar and the retail area and tasting room, et cetera. Can folks take a tour of what's going on here behind the scenes?
Oh, absolutely. We, we do it more frequently in the summer, but we do it year round. We offer tours. You can book those online. We tell a lot more stories from Buffalo City, how they smuggled stuff. There's some really interesting stories about how they used to smuggle things out of there and not get caught by the law. But we do tours. We go through our production process. We show them how we make what we make and the equipment and how it operates and what it does. And that's available.
Well, and for those who are listening or watching, I do want to mention, because you have several books here that I would highly recommend. The one I'm most familiar with would be Lost Buffalo City by Wayne and Nancy Gray. They're locals here over in Wanchese in Dare County. But Amazon, local bookstores is what I would recommend. Most of these books are sold locally, and it's a history that even, again, growing up here, not a lot of locals really know about. I always heard about Buffalo City. I had no idea about its connection to Prohibition, et cetera. That's fascinating. Also growing up here, Buddy, I remember when sort of craft beer started taking hold, and a lot of that happened out in the western part of the state in Asheville, as I remember. And then, of course, we had the Weeping Radish Brewery over in Manteo.
The very first microbrewery in North Carolina was the Weeping Radish.
See, I didn't know that.
The founder, Uli, was from Germany, master distiller, and he spent years pressing on the ears in Raleigh with the legislature to get the laws changed in order to be able to open that. And he opened that in Manteo. And it was the first brew pub in North Carolina.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, so we have a lot of history here with that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your menu, because it sounds like you have a combination of what might be referred as kind of the classics, maybe Prohibition era New Orleans style cocktails, and some really interesting twist on some of those, right? So let's talk a little bit about the menu. How involved are you in the menu here? What's the process, and what can folks expect when they come and visit the bar to have a...
Well, one of the best things that I did when we opened this facility is I hired the best possible staff you can imagine. And we have this whole experience here is made possible because of the people that we have. They're passionate about what they do. I am not a bartender. I'm not I have a few of the cocktails that I brought and said, what do you think about putting this on the menu? I think of all the ones I brought, one might have survived the scrutiny of my bar staff. We have a fantastic manager that her name is Kelly, and Kelly comes up with all of the cocktails that are on our menu, and some of them are traditional, an old-fashioned. We tend to name these after things in Buffalo City sometimes, and we put our own spin on it. But we have some really, really good, unique cocktails here too. Having flavored vodkas allows us to develop some very interesting cocktails. And one of our most popular ones we call it a Carolina Heat. And it uses a toasted coconut vodka with pineapple juice and a cucumber habanero simple syrup. So it has a little spice to it, a little heat to it. Put a little Mexican tahini on the rim, and that's very popular. But we do orange type drinks, we do tropical kind of drinks, the old classic cocktails, martinis, you name it.
Help, and I don't know the answer to this, but I am curious. So within North Carolina, we were talking about the fact that your spirits are distributed across the state. You can purchase them here, but outside of that, alcohol, liquor, spirits are only sold in the ABC stores. So anyone driving through North Carolina, other states have that as well. We'll see the ABC store. That's where you buy most of your liquor, at least. Beer and wine can be sold elsewhere. How does that work in terms of your being able to sell what you distill here within your store and outside of the ABC environment?
Right. So, one of the outcomes of Prohibition, because Prohibition required a constitutional amendment to be overturned, there was a lot of politics involved, and there were a lot of states that were against it, to be honest with you, North Carolina being one of them. And so for that to happen, the federal government basically said, all we're interested in is manufacturing. We won't even get involved in whether it's sold, how it's sold. They gave that to the states. And so they told the states, if you don't want alcohol in your state, you don't have to have it in your state. And that was how they got at a national level, they got Prohibition repealed. At the state level, some states were all ready to go. They just said, yes, this is great. It's illegal here again. And the state didn't really get highly involved. In those states like North Carolina that were really torn about whether they wanted alcohol or not, at the state level, they had to negotiate at the county level. Some counties wanted it and some didn't. And so North Carolina, like some of the other southern states, are what are known as control states. That means the state itself is involved in the distribution and the sale of the product. And so at the state level in North Carolina, the state controls distribution, or wholesale, if you will. And then every county has retail. So when you go into an ABC store in North Carolina, typically it is a county owned and operated enterprise, right? Currituck County has an ABC board. Dare County has an ABC board. Hyde County has an ABC board. Wake County and Raleigh has an ABC board. And so those stores are all managed at that level. And so when we sell our product through out North Carolina, we first have to put product in inventory in the state warehouse in Raleigh. And all the product that is in the ABC stores, whether it's in Asheville or in Nags Head, all that product comes on a truck from Raleigh from that central ABC warehouse. So we send our product there, pallets of product that we keep in inventory. And then they they bring that back here by order. So we're available all over the state because we're in the warehouse and we're a stock item. Most of our products are stock items for ABC stores. And then we can sell it here at the distillery. We can't sell anywhere else in North Carolina. That's the only places our product's available. So here at the distillery, we have all of our products, and you go to ABC stores, they may have all of our products. The local ABC stores around here all carry most of our products. You go to some areas of the state, they might only carry our bourbon or only carry our vodka. It really depends on the store and the county and what decisions they've made.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Buffalo City Distillery, a fantastic place to stop on your way to the Northern Outer Banks, to the beaches of the Northern Outer Banks, a fantastic place to stop on your way back, and also during your visit. Lots of, as far as the entertainment's concerned, the tasting room, the tours that you give, I mean, this is a wonderful place on the Northern Outer Banks mainland. Buddy Byrum, owner, founder, Buffalo City Distillery, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you,
Here, wild horses roam windswept beaches, and the ocean stretches endlessly before you. Each sunrise brings a new adventure. Each breeze carries the salt and serenity of the sea. Climb our historic red brick lighthouse. Savor fresh seafood and North Carolina barbecue. This is more than a vacation. It's a place that renews your spirit and keeps calling you back. Where in the Outer Banks? Only in the Northern Outer Banks.